Welcome back to the deep dive.
Hello again.
Today we are heading north, and I don't mean just a little bit up the road.
Not at all.
I mean, we are mentally transporting ourselves to the wind-swept, rain-stoked, dramatically beautiful hills of the Scottish Highlands. We are going to talk about an animal that I think arguably holds the title for the most charismatic creature in the entire agricultural world.
Oh, easily.
You know them, you love them.
Yeah.
We're talking about the Highland cow. Or, if you want to be authentic about it,
The Highland Coo.
the Highland coo.
Or the Hairy Coo.
The hairy too. It is an absolute icon.
It really is.
It is. And I think for most people, myself included, before I started reading through this massive stack of notes, when you think of a Highland cow, you have a very specific, almost cartoonish image in your head.
Oh, yeah, you see the postcard?
Exactly. It's that shaggy ginger coat, the massive sweeping horns, and that distinct emo fringe covering their eyes. They look like big, cuddly Muppets.
Or perhaps 1970s rock stars who haven't quite given up on the dream.
Exactly. They have a very specific, very photogenic aesthetic. But what I found so fascinating going through the research for this deep dive.
And we have quite the stack today.
We do. We have the official handbook of the Highland Cattle Society, which is dense.
Very dense.
Historical breed standards dating all the way back to 1885, and some really technical manuals on beef production and conservation grazing. What I found is that the cute factor is almost a distraction.
It is. It's a bit of a deception, really.
Right? Because underneath that postcard perfect exterior is actually one of those sophisticated ancient survival machines on the planet.
That is the perfect way to frame it. If you strip away the Instagram filter, what you're looking at is a biological marvel of adaptation.
Right.
This isn't just a farm animal that someone designed to look cool in a photo or to sell plush toys in a gift shop.
Oh.
Every single one of those features, the hair, the horns, the body shape, the metabolism, it's a tool. It was developed over thousands of years to survive in an environment where most other cattle would simply perish.
So our mission today is to move beyond the postcard.
Yes.
We want to understand the biology, the deep history, and really the utility of this animal. Because, as it turns out, this ancient breed might actually be a blueprint for the future of sustainable farming.
It's a classic case of looking backward to move forward. Sometimes the old ways, or in this case the old breeds, have the answers we've been looking for in modern agriculture.
Okay, let's start at the beginning. And when I say beginning, I mean deep history.
Way back.
Because the handbook of the Highland Cattle Society makes a pretty bold claim right off the bat. It says this is the oldest registered breed in the world.
That's right. The first herd book, which is basically the official registry of the lineage, the who's who of cows.
The family tree.
The family tree, exactly. It was published in 1885.
Okay, so that's the modern formal part.
Right. That formalizes the breed. But the lineage goes back much, much further than that. We have written records discussing these cattle from the 18th century, but the archaeological and historical consensus is that these cattle likely date back to the 6th century.
The 6th century. So we are talking about the Dark Ages.
Essentially, yes. We are talking about a time long before modern agriculture, long before industrial farming. And there are some fascinating theories about where they actually came from before that.
Like where?
Well, you have to picture the migration patterns of early humans and their livestock moving across Europe. One prevalent theory in the texts is that they are a blend of two ancient Asiatic breeds, Bos longifrons and Bos primigenius.
Bos primigenius. That's the aurochs, right? The giant prehistoric wild ox.
Exactly, the ancestor of all modern cattle. A massive, formidable beast. The theory is that these breeds migrated west and north to the Baltic shores about 6,000 years ago.
6,000 years.
Yeah.
Wow. And then how did they get to Scotland? Are we talking Vikings?
It's very possible. The Vikings, or other migrating groups moving across the North Sea toward the British Isles, would have brought their livestock with them.
Makes sense.
They needed a food source that could travel. But here is the key point. However they arrived, once they hit the Highlands and the Western Isles of Scotland, the environment took over.
The environment became the breeder.
Precisely. Scotland is not an easy place to live, especially if you are a cow. It's wet, it's cold, the terrain is rough, it's windy, and the food sources are tough.
Right.
There's no lush ryegrass growing naturally on a granite mountainside. So the weak animals died, the strong ones survived, nature sculpted them into what they are.
Now this is where I learned something completely new. I always assumed a Highland cow was a Highland cow. You see one, you've seen the breed.
No, not originally.
But the sources point out that originally there were two distinct classes of these cattle.
Yes, and this is a distinction that has largely blurred over time, but historically you had the Highlander and the Kyloe.
Okay, break that down for me. What's the difference?
So the Highlander was found on the mainland of Scotland. These were generally larger animals simply because the pastures on the mainland were slightly better.
A bit more to eat.
A bit more nutrition, exactly. They came in a variety of colors, often red or brown.
Okay, so that's the mainland version. Bigger, brownish.
Then you had the cattle living out on the western islands, the Hebrides. These were the Kylo.
It's the Kylo.
And they were smaller, physically, which makes sense because they were living in a much more severe climate with very limited rations.
Right.
It's essentially the island dwarfism effect you see in biology, where species get smaller on islands to conserve resources. And interestingly, the Kyloes were predominantly black.
Black. Because when I think of a Highland cow today, I think ginger. I think the classic orange-red.
We'll get to the color shift in a moment, but yes, originally the island cattle were mostly black.
Huh.
And the name Kylo, this is one of my favorite details in the history, comes from the way they got them to market.
I read this in the notes and I had to stop and visualize it.
Yeah.
Tell us about the Kyles.
A Kyle is a narrow strait of water separating the islands from the mainland, like the famous Kyle of Loch Alsh.
Right.
Back in the 18th century, there were no bridges. There were certainly no massive cattle ferries or trucks. So the drovers, the men moving the cattle, would actually swim the herds across the ocean.
You're kidding. I'm just trying to picture this. You have these small, shaggy black cattle, and you are driving them into the freezing cold North Atlantic to swim across a channel to get to the market.
That's exactly it. And that is why they were called Kyloe. It speaks to their incredible hardiness.
I'll say.
If they weren't tough, they wouldn't survive the commute, let alone the winter. Imagine the constitution required to swim across a Scottish strait.
That puts the survival machine concept into perspective. They aren't just standing in a field looking pretty. They're swimming through ocean currents.
And walking. We have to talk about the walking.
The drovers. This was a massive operation, wasn't it?
Huge. In the 18th century, this wasn't just a local subsistence animal. This was a massive economic engine for Scotland.
Right, the numbers were huge.
The notes you have there show the number. In 1723, over 30,000 cattle were sold annually into England.
And they didn't have trucks. They didn't have trains.
They walked. These are the famous drove roads that still crisscross Scotland today. If you hike in Scotland, you are often walking on these old cattle paths.
No way.
The cattle were walked hundreds of miles from the Highlands down to the great markets or trysts in places like Falkirk, Crieff, or Stirling.
And then even further south.
Often further south, deep into England to feed the growing cities.
Just pause on that for a second. That is an incredible physical feat. Walking hundreds of miles on rough terrain, foraging for food along the way.
Right, because nobody is bringing a feed truck behind them.
And staying healthy enough to be sold for beef at the end.
That is the evolutionary crucible. That journey required an animal that could eat rough vegetation along the roadside thistles, scrub, rough grass.
Stuff other cows wouldn't touch.
Exactly. And they had to withstand the wind and rain and not lose all its body condition before it arrived. If a cow couldn't do that, it didn't get bred, it was culled, or it died on the road.
So the genetics were purified by the journey itself.
That's a great way to put it. The breed we have today is the result of centuries of this extreme vetting process.
So we have these two types, the mainland and the island, the red and the black. How did they merge into the single, mostly ginger breed we know today?
Well, it was a slow process of integration as trade increased, but there's a very specific royal thumbprint on the history of the breed. We have to talk about Queen Victoria.
Ah, yes, the original influencer.
The ultimate influencer of the 19th century. Queen Victoria visited the Highlands and fell in love with the area. Balmoral Castle is the famous result of that love.
Right.
She became obsessed with Scottish culture, but she expressed a preference for the red-colored cattle. She just liked the look of them better than the black ones.
It was purely aesthetic. She just liked the ginger one.
Purely aesthetic, she preferred the red. And because the queen liked the red ones, the breeders started selecting for red to please her.
Of course they did.
If you wanted to sell to the royal estate, or if you wanted to be fashionable, you bred red cows.
Wow.
So that selective breeding shifted the dominance from the original black color, which was very common in the Kyloe, to the red color we associate with the breed today.
That is wild. It's a great example of how a single person's taste can alter the genetics of an entire livestock population.
It really is. And the royal connection didn't stop there. The sources mention that the late Queen Elizabeth II maintained a fold at Balmoral Castle that was founded back in 1954.
Is it just a show fold? Like a petting zoo for royalty?
No, it's a working fold. They are treated like proper cattle, but it cemented the Highland cow as a symbol of Scotland. It gave them a status that protected them when other native breeds were disappearing in favor of commercial cattle.
It's amazing how history, geography, and royalty collide to make this animal.
It's the perfect storm.
And speaking of geography, they didn't just stay in Scotland. The outline mentions exports starting in the late 19th century.
Yes, the world realized that these cattle could survive where others couldn't. They went to Canada in the 1880s, the U.S. in the 1890s.
Australia, too.
Australia, absolutely. But my favorite detail is the Andes.
The Andes Mountains.
Oh.
As in South America.
Yes. They are grazing at 10,000 feet in the Andes because the conditions, thin air, cold, rough forage, are similar enough to the highlands that they thrive there.
That is insane. Okay, so we have the history. We have the Vikings, the swimming drovers, the Queen. Let's look at the hardware.
Let's do it.
I want to deep dive into the anatomy of a survivor because the source material calls the coat the superpower.
It really is, and it's unique among cattle. Most cattle have a single coat. The Highland has a double-layer system.
Like a high-end mountaineering jacket.
Exactly. Think of it like wearing a thermal base layer with a waxed canvas raincoat over it.
Okay.
The undercoat is downy, soft, and woolly. That traps the air and keeps the body heat in. It's the insulation.
And the outer layer.
The outer coat is long, sometimes up to 13 inches long.
13 inches.
And it's oily and coarse. That oiliness is key. It sheds the rain and snow, so even in a torrential Scottish downpour or a blizzard, the skin of the animal rarely actually gets wet.
That's incredible. So they are basically waterproof.
And because of this, the sources compare their cold tolerance to Arctic-dwelling animals like caribou and reindeer.
Wow.
They can live outside 365 days a year.
So they don't need barns.
They don't need barns. In fact, keeping them inside can be detrimental. The sources warn that if you put them in a barn that isn't perfectly ventilated, they can overheat or develop respiratory issues.
Really?
They are built for the fresh air. They need the wind.
But here is the fascinating flip side that I saw in the notes. They are adaptable. The sources mentioned that they thrive in Texas and Georgia, too.
They do.
How? That seems like wearing a parka and a sauna.
Mm-hmm.
If they're built for the Arctic, how do they survive a Texas summer?
They shed. It sounds simple, but they are incredibly efficient at it.
Just like a dog.
But on a much bigger scale. If you move a Highland to a hot climate, they will shed that heavy undercoat and a lot of the outer coat in the summer. They might not look quite as hairy coo as they do in a Scottish winter.
Right.
They look a bit sleeker, a bit more like a standard cow, but they adapt. They are biologically flexible.
That's impressive plasticity. Now let's talk about the other defining feature. The horns.
The horns.
I think a lot of people see those massive horns and think, okay, that's for fighting off wolves, or maybe just for looking intimidating. And sure, predator control is part of it.
It is.
But the sources mentioned a use for the horns that I had never considered.
The snow shovel function.
Yes. This blew my mind.
It's genius, really. In the deep winter, when the grass is buried under hard-packed snow or ice, most cattle like an Angus or a Hereford would starve.
They can't get to the food.
They can't. Their noses aren't tough enough to break the ice crust.
So what does the Highland do?
The Highland uses those sweeping horns to dig and sweep away the snow to access the buried vegetation.
No way.
It's a tool. It's like carrying a shovel on your head. They sweep the horn side to side, clear a patch, and graze, then move on.
It's amazing. It transforms the environment from inaccessible to buffet.
Exactly. It changes the equation of survival.
And there's a cool tip in the handbook for identifying gender based on the horns, which I found helpful because, let's be honest, it's hard to tell sometimes with all that hair.
It can be tricky if you don't know what to look for, but generally the rule is in the shape.
Okay.
A bull's horns, the males, are thicker at the base, shorter, and they tend to sweep majestically outward and forward, staying relatively level with the ground.
Okay, so thick, forward, and level. Like a handlebar mustache.
Right. A very good analogy.
Yeah.
Whereas the cows, the females, have horns that are longer, finer at the tip, and they sweep outward and then curve upwards.
So if the horns go up, it's likely a lady.
Likely a lady. Ladies lead up is a way to remember it.
I love that. Now, we touched on color with Queen Victoria, but the sources list a whole palette of official colors.
Oh, yeah.
Red, black, yellow, dun, white, brindle, silver.
It's a rainbow breed, and interestingly, the dun color can range from a dark, muddy gray to a light biscuit color.
But there was a weird genetic quirk mentioned about the calves changing color.
Yes, this is a classic gotcha for new breeders. The genetics of coat color in Highlands involves alleles at the MC1R and PMELL genes.
So it's complicated.
It's complex stuff involving melanin production, but practically what it means is that a black calf is often born with a coat that looks red or chocolate brown,
Oh, really?
and a red calf can have a black muzzle.
So you look at the newborn and think, oh, I have a red heifer.
And 6 months later, she's jet black. It's a surprise package. The handbook basically says, don't fill out the registration paperwork the day they were born. Wait and see what they actually are.
It's like a gender reveal party, but for color. It's a brindle.
Exactly. It's a fun quirk of the breed.
Okay, let's move to their personality. Because they look like giant teddy bears. And the sources say they are docile.
They are, generally.
But there were some serious warnings in the text, too.
It's all about context. The Highland has a very sophisticated social structure. First of all, we don't call a group of Highlands a herd.
Right, it's a fold.
A fold. And that name comes from the old stone shelters folds that were used to protect them in winter from weather or wolves.
Oh, I didn't know that's where the name came from.
Yep. And within that fold, there is a very clear dominance hierarchy.
Like a pecking order.
Exactly. Age dominates youth, and males generally dominate females. Because this hierarchy is so clear, they don't actually fight that much.
They know their place.
They know their place, and socially, they are very affectionate. The sources talk about licking, mounting, and play fighting as friendly behaviors.
So they are friendly. They like being groomed.
They do. They halter easily. If you handle them young, they are like big dogs. However, and this is a big however,
Here comes the warning.
you have to respect the hardware. A Highland cow has a massive set of horns.
Right.
Even a friendly head toss to get a fly off their back has a 3-foot reach. If you are standing there, that horn can break a rib or send you flying.
It's not malicious.
The sources are very explicit about that. It's not malice, it's just physics. You are soft, the horn is hard.
And then there are the mothers. The sources called them highly protective.
That is a polite British way of saying, don't mess with the calf. A
Ah.
Highland cow with a newborn is a different animal. She will defend that calf with her life.
I bet.
The handbook actually recommends using binoculars to check on newborn calves rather than walking right up to them in the field.
Binoculars. That's a serious keep-out sign.
It is, but that protective instinct is also why they are such good mothers. You rarely have predator loss with Highlands because the mums are so vigilant.
Right.
A coyote or a stray dog doesn't stand a chance against a pissed-off Highland cow.
That makes sense. Okay, so let's say a listener's captivated. They have some land, and they're thinking, I want a fold of Highland Coos.
It happens.
We need to talk about husbandry.
Yeah.
How do you actually keep them? And the first thing that jumped out at me was the fencing section. Seems like regular wire doesn't quite cut it.
No, standard fencing can be a problem. The issue isn't that they try to escape. They aren't jumpers like some breeds.
Oh, yeah.
The issue is that they itch.
The itch.
They are itchy creatures. They have that thick coat, they get lice, they get hot, and they love to rub. Now imagine a 1,200-pound animal with massive horns deciding that your fence post is a scratching post.
They'll flatten it.
They will crush it. If you use standard barbed wire, they will lean on it until the staples pop or the wire snaps.
So what's the solution? The handbook got very technical here.
It did. They recommend C8-80-15 netting.
Which sounds like a droid from Star Wars. C8, bring me the hay.
It does, but what that code means is it's a hinge joint field fence. The numbers refer to the number of horizontal wires, 8, the height, 80 centimeters, and the spacing of the vertical wires, 15 centimeters.
It's just heavy duty.
It's heavy-duty, mild steel netting. It has some give, but it's strong. Or, better yet, high-tensile wire, especially in snowy areas.
Why is high tensile better for snow?
Because when it gets cold, wire shrinks. If you have regular wire, it can snap under the tension of the cold contraction.
Oh, I never thought of that.
High tensile stays tight, but has enough elasticity to handle the temperature shifts. And for bulls, you need a fortress. The sources emphasize maintaining boundaries, not just to keep them in, but to prevent unwanted breeding with the neighbor's cows.
Right, you don't want your Highland bull impregnating the neighbor's prize Angus.
That causes neighbor disputes and legal issues.
But there was a mention of some high-tech solutions, too. No fence collars.
Yes, this is fascinating. This is the intersection of ancient breeds and modern tech.
It's GPS.
It's GPS technology. The cattle wear collars, kind of like heavy-duty dog collars, that talk to a satellite.
And how does it keep them in?
You draw a boundary on an app on your phone. When the cow approaches that virtual line, the collar plays a melody.
A melody. Like a ringtone?
A little tune. It starts low and gets higher in pitch as they get closer to the line. It warns them
That's kind of close.
until they cross the line. If they ignore the music and keep going, they get a small electric pulse.
Ah, the zap.
The zap. But the cows are smart. They learn very quickly that the music means turn around.
That's brilliant.
What's brilliant about this is that it allows farmers to graze cattle in areas where building a fence is impossible. Think about the Scottish Highlands. Steep mountainsides, rocky crags, sensitive conservation areas.
You can't dig post holes there.
You can't. But with no fence, you can graze those areas.
That is brilliant. It unlocks the landscape. Now, what about food? We know they are survivors, but what does that mean for their diet?
It means they are low input. They are efficiency experts. A Highland cow will eat fodder that other breeds, like a Holstein or an Angus, would turn their noses up at.
Like what?
We're talking brush, cedar saplings, oak leaves, thistles, nettles.
Wait, they eat nettles, stinging nettles.
They eat everything. They are non-selective browsers. Their tongues and mouths are tough enough to handle the stingers and the thorns. This makes them incredibly cheap to feed compared to picky eaters.
That's impressive.
And this brings us to a really interesting technical point about feeding them in winter. The difference between hay and haylage.
I admit, before reading this, I thought hay was just hay, dried grass.
Most people do, but if you are feeding cattle, the difference is life or death. So, hay is dried grass. It's cut, left in the sun to dry out completely. It has low moisture, usually under 15–20%. It's light and dry.
Okay.
Haylage is grass that is cut a bit earlier and isn't dried fully. It's wrapped in plastic, those big white marshmallows you see in fields.
Right.
Inside the plastic, it ferments. It's like sauerkraut for cows.
Tasty.
They love it. But here's the catch. Haylage has high moisture content. It's wet. So let's say you have a bucket of hay and a bucket of haylage. They might weigh the same, but the bucket of haylage is 50% water.
So there's less actual food in it.
Exactly. Less dry matter. And the cow needs a certain amount of dry matter to survive and stay warm. The sources warn that you need to do the math. If you swap from hay to haylage and don't increase the weight you are feeding, your cows might go hungry because they are essentially just drinking water instead of eating calories.
That is a crucial detail. Speaking of water, they drink a lot.
12 gallons a day in hot weather. You need a reliable water source.
And checking for lice, the itch section.
Yeah, lice are the bane of the Highland owner. Because the coat is so thick, it's a paradise for lice. The telltale sign is the wet patch.
A wet patch.
If you see a cow with a wet, matted patch on its neck or shoulders, it's likely because it's been licking or scratching that spot raw.
Which explains why they destroy the fences scratching themselves.
It's all connected. If you control the lice with things like ivermectin or natural remedies like chicory, you save your fences.
There was also a note about minerals, specifically magnesium.
Yes, staggers. Hypomagnesemia. It sounds like a Harry Potter spell, but it's a deadly condition.
What happens?
In the lush spring grass, magnesium levels can drop. If a cow gets low magnesium, they get the staggers, they lose balance, they tremor, and they can die very quickly. So you have to supplement minerals.
Let's move on to the cycle of life, breeding. Because if you're keeping a fold, you're likely having calves.
Hopefully.
One thing that stood out is that they are famous for easy calving.
This is a huge selling point for the brood. If you are a farmer, the last thing you want is to be up at 3 a.m. in a snowstorm pulling a calf out of a cow with chains because it's stuck.
That sounds horrific.
It's stressful, dangerous, and expensive if you need a vet. But the Highland cow has a particularly wide pelvis, and the calves are relatively small, usually 40 to 60 pounds.
So they just come out easier.
Right. This combination means that assisted births are rare. They just handle it.
The notes mentioned the diving position.
Yes, that's the normal presentation.
Yeah.
2 front feet followed by the head, like a diver going into a pool. And usually the cow goes off to a quiet spot away from the fold, has the calf, cleans it up, and that's it.
But the sources did highlight a specific crisis scenario that sounds heartbreaking. The dummy calf.
Yes. This is something every breeder dreads. It's a neurological issue or a hypoxia issue during birth.
Explain the stakes here. Why is it an emergency?
It's all about the colostrum. Colostrum is that first milk the mother produces. It is packed with antibodies.
Liquid gold.
It really is. A newborn calf has no immune system. It relies entirely on absorbing those antibodies from the mother's milk, but the gut can only absorb them for a short window. We're talking about 6 hours.
The clock is ticking the moment they hit the ground.
Exactly. After 6 hours, the gut closes and they can't absorb the antibodies anymore.
Wow.
A dummy calf is one that fails to suckle. It might look gutted or hunched up. It makes a specific noise. It's wandering around looking for a teat but can't find it. Or it tries to suck on the mother's hair or flank instead.
It's lost.
It's lost. And if you don't intervene, it will likely die of infection within weeks because it never got its immunity.
So what do you do?
You have to get milk into it, which involves either milking the mother, which, remember, she is a Highland bum and might want to kill you for touching her, or using a tube to feed the calf directly into its stomach.
That sounds intense.
It's high stakes, high stress.
Yeah.
But saving a dummy calf is incredibly rewarding.
I can imagine. But assuming the calf is healthy, they wean naturally around 8 or 9 months.
Yes, it's usually a very gentle process in nature. The calf slowly starts eating more grass and drinking less milk.
I want to pivot to something that feels very current. We hear a lot about the environmental impact of cattle.
Right. Methane, land use, overgrazing.
But the sources frame the Highland cow as the green cow, an eco-warrior.
This is a really important distinction. Not all cattle farming is the same. The Highland cow interacts with the environment in a way that is fundamentally different from intensive commercial farming.
How so?
We talked about them being non-selective browsers. They eat the scrub, the brambles, the gorse. Conservationists actually use them as eco-mowers.
Give me an example of how that works.
Okay, imagine a wildflower meadow or a sensitive butterfly habitat. If you leave it alone, eventually aggressive scrub bushes, saplings, brambles will take over and choke out the flowers.
Right. It becomes a thicket.
If you put sheep in there, they will eat the flowers and leave the scrub. They are picky eaters.
Okay.
But if you put Highlands in, they crush the bracken and eat the scrub. They clear the aggressive plants, which opens up the floor for the delicate wildflowers and butterflies to return. This is called silvopasture or conservation grazing.
So they are landscape architects.
They are. And physically, they are lighter on the land. This is about physics. A big commercial cow, like a Charolais or a Limousin, is heavy. It has relatively small feet for its weight.
So when it walks on wet ground,
It punches through, it sinks.
it poaches the ground.
That's the term for turning it up into mud, which destroys the soil structure and causes runoff.
And the Highland.
The Highland is lighter, but more importantly, it has large, wide feet.
Like snowshoes.
Exactly like snowshoes. It distributes its weight over a larger surface area. It floats on top of the soil rather than punching through it.
That's amazing.
This makes them ideal for grazing sensitive areas like wetlands or fens where other cattle would cause massive damage.
And the sources mentioned seed dispersal too.
Yes. Because they have that long, shaggy coat, they pick up seeds as they walk through the meadow. Then they walk a mile, shake themselves off, or lie down, and the seeds fall out. They are Johnny Appleseeds for wildflowers.
So they aren't just taking from the land, they are actively managing it.
That's it.
That connects really well to the next section, which is the products. Because obviously, traditionally, these are beef cattle.
They are.
But there's a paradox here that I found fascinating. We usually associate fatty beef marbling with grain feeding and heavy animals, but the Highland beef is described as lean and well marbled.
This goes back to the code. Think about a standard beef cow. To stay warm in winter, it needs to lay down a thick layer of subcutaneous fat back fat.
It's insulation.
It's essentially wearing a jacket made of blubber.
Right.
The Highland cow has the hair for insulation. It's wearing a wool sweater. It doesn't need that thick layer of back fat, so it puts its energy into marbling the meat itself,
Right.
intramuscular fat, rather than wrapping itself in blubber.
So you get the flavor from the marbling, but you don't have the waste of the thick rind of fat on the outside.
Exactly. And the health stats are surprising. The Scottish Agricultural College did a study referenced in your notes. They found that Highland beef is lower in cholesterol than other beef.
Okay, but here is the kicker. They said it's lower in cholesterol than chicken.
That is the headline right there. Lower than chicken. It's also higher in protein and iron. It's a premium product.
So why isn't it everywhere? Why isn't McDonald's serving Highland burgers?
Because it's slow. A commercial breed might be ready for slaughter in 14 to 18 months. A Highland steer grows slowly. It takes 30 months or more to finish.
Time is money.
Time is money. But that extra time is also flavor. It's the difference between a fast-grown supermarket tomato and a slow-grown heirloom tomato from the garden. The texture and taste are completely different.
What about milk? The sources say they were originally dual-purpose cows for the crofters, the small farmers.
They were. If you were a crofter in 1850, you had a cow for milk and for a calf. The milk is incredibly rich, up to 10% butterfat.
10%. That's basically ice cream.
It is. Jersey cows are famous for rich milk, and they're around 5–6%. So Highland milk is rocket fuel.
So why no Highland dairies?
Volume and mechanics, a Highland might give you 2 gallons a day, a Holstein gives you 10 or 12, and the teats on a Highland are small and hairy.
Oh.
They are very hard to milk with modern machines, so you won't see Highland shees in the supermarket, but that rich milk is what makes their calves grow so strong and healthy. It's investment milk.
There was also a section on crossbreeding, hybrid vigor.
This is where the Highland meets the modern market. If you breed a Highland cow with, say, a Shorthorn or a Limousin bull, you get the best of both worlds.
The luing cattle.
The luing is a famous breed developed exactly this way. You get the hardiness and the mothering instinct of the Highland. She can live on a hill and eat rocks.
The survival machine.
Right. But the calf grows faster and has the body shape that the commercial market pays top dollar for.
So the Highland mom is the secret weapon for a low-maintenance herd.
Precisely. She does all the work, and you get a valuable calf.
Now, we can't talk about Highland Coos without talking about the show ring. Because as rugged as they are, there's a whole culture of making them look fabulous.
Dressing the animal? It is an art form.
The sources mentioned oiling the hooves and horns.
Oh, yes. Washing, blow-drying. They use a specific tool called a perth pin comb.
A perth pin comb.
It's a heavy comb used to pull the hair up and out, fluffing the coat to make the animal look wider and stouter.
It's a beauty pageant.
It is. They strive for that perfect doson, the fringe, but it serves a purpose. It showcases the quality of the stock. It proves the animal is healthy and well-built.
That's fair.
Although there is a funny detail about the nose rings.
Oh, right.
Bulls must have nose rings for handling safety first. A bull is dangerous, but cows, if you show a cow, she needs a nose ring, but it has to be removable.
Clip-on jewelry.
Essentially. You put it in for the show and take it out when she goes back to the field.
And we also saw that modern genetics is entering the scene. It's not just about looks anymore. They are using DNA testing.
This is the new frontier, using tissue sampling, usually a tiny punch from the ear, to verify parentage. But they are also starting to track traits like tenderness or marbling. It's bringing high-tech science to this ancient breed.
And finally, before we wrap up, we have to touch on the pet factor, the agritourism. Because let's be honest, people pay good money just to brush a Highland cow.
They do. It's a huge industry now. Toucans, farm visits, photo shoots, people are obsessed with them.
But the sources give a warning here, too.
A serious warning. These are herd animals. You cannot buy one Highland cow as a lawn ornament.
Right.
They need companionship. If you keep one alone, it will be miserable. It will pace, it will moo constantly, and it will likely become behaviorally difficult or aggressive.
Because it's stressed.
It's lonely. They need a friend, even if it's just a steer or even a pony. But they need a buddy. They're social creatures.
So, rule number 1, don't get a lonely coo.
Never get a lonely coo.
So, expert. We've covered a lot. We've gone from the Vikings and the swimming drovers to the snow shovel horns and the eco-mower grazing habits. If we step back, what is the big takeaway here? What does the Highland cow represent in the bigger picture of agriculture?
I think the Highland cow represents a challenge to the modern idea of efficiency.
Unpack that.
For the last 50 years, agriculture has been obsessed with speed, faster growth, bigger carcasses, quicker turnover.
Right.
And we achieved that with intensive commercial breeds. We made cows that grow incredibly fast on grain.
Right. We industrialized the cow.
But we lost something. We lost hardiness. We lost the ability to thrive on poor food. We lost the low-input survival skills.
And the Highland held on?
The Highland cow held on to those things. They are slower, yes. They are smaller, yes. But they are sustainable in a way that high-output cattle simply aren't.
They work with the environment, not against it.
Exactly. In a world where we are worried about carbon footprints, soil health, and sustainable food systems, the Highland cow isn't a relic of the past. It's a very relevant option for the future. They turn waste land into high-quality protein without destroying the ecosystem.
That is a powerful thought. And I want to leave our listeners with one final provocation, something I found in the notes that really stuck with me.
Okay.
There is a tension mentioned in the sources. As the Highland becomes more popular for showing, for pets, for premium beef breeders are tempted to select for bigger animals or fluffier coats or specific colors.
The trap of breeding for the market rather than the environment.
Exactly. The question is, if we breed the Highland to fit our modern commercial needs, do we risk destroying the very thing that made it special? If a Highland cow becomes too big to live on a Scottish hillside in winter without a barn, is it still a Highland cow?
That is the million-dollar question. Can we preserve the function while we enjoy the form? It's the responsibility of every breeder to ensure the survival machine doesn't just become a pretty picture.
Something to chew on. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the world of the Highland coo.
My pleasure.
We hope you learned something new, and maybe the next time you see that shaggy fringe on Instagram, you'll see the survival machine underneath.
Thanks for listening.
See you next time.